Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video will be for Standard Best of 1. If you're looking for a Best of 3 Standard, we also did a deep dive for the Pro Tour list, so all the decks that the professional Magic players brought to the Big Stakes tournament this past weekend. All those deck lists were covered in a video yesterday, so that's up in the playlist as well if you're interested in seeing that. As always, we get the data from Untapped.gg. It's a companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client, tracks win rates, loss rates, deck collections, whole bunch of cool functionality. Link is in the video description down below. As well, I will paste all these deck lists so you can easily import them, including timestamps. So if you don't want to listen to the intro, if you don't want to listen to a certain deck, you can skip ahead, find the deck you're interested in, and then quickly get the summary there. The whole point is to make this video as easily consumable for you as possible. Quick kind of reminder, we did have the charity drive in April. We did wrap that up. We hit $450, just a little bit over, $454. That will be donated to Toronto Food Bank, so I appreciate all the support that came up this month. And in addition, we're still trying to get to 10,000 subs on the channel by June, where we just cracked 8,500. So if you haven't subbed to the channel, free, easy, helps out the channel. And it kind of reminds you whenever we go live with these, especially if you're looking to historic, explore, anything like that. All the deck lists every week will be made available to you on the channel. So we're looking at Diamond to Mythic rank, 55,000 games of Best of 1 from April 29th through to May 6th. And the top performing deck is Mono Red Aggro. So there's kind of two versions of the Mono Red deck we'll cover. So there's the stock list that was nobody updated their wild cards. It was good enough before. It's good enough now. And it's nice. Nice. 69%. So this is pretty much your stock list, your Raijus, Squeeze. If you want a deep dive, we've been talking about this for months. Very aggressive deck. The one thing that we've been seeing with this deck, it's gotten a little bit more on the 1-drops. No Feldon in this list. So it's very much drop your hand early and then try to kill them as fast as possible. Voldaire and Aperture as opposed to the Feldon in the lists. The other Mono Red list, and this list has been weird. So I played it a bit, 58%. I played it and then tweaked it, but the card that like keeps baffling my mind is Red Thrillseeker. This card both feels like the worst card I've ever played in a Mono Red deck, but single-handedly won me games that I had no business winning. So it's a 3-mana 1/1. Yeah, so if we're paying 3 mana for a 1/1, it's got backup 2, so when it enters the battlefield, you can put 2 counters on another creature, and it gains the ability of pay 1, sacrifice this creature, deals damage equal to this power 10 creature. So you basically get to throw your creatures as lightning bolts or whatever their power is. The thing is, I found with this card, you typically don't want to play it on turn 3 because you then don't get, especially if you put the counter, like the ability on another creature, you can't sack it that turn because you don't have the mana. Or you don't necessarily want to put the counters on a creature to have it then be killed without the ability to sacrifice it as well. So it's a weird kind of like sequencing card. I found I played it more turn 4 onwards than the requisite like turn 3 play that you normally would slam with something like a Squee, where you're happy to play it on 3. The other card in the deck that I wasn't too pleased with was the Shivan Devastator. I really don't like this in Mono Red. You want to be an aggressive deck, and the rate is just really behind. It's a card that's like a good late game threat, but with this deck, you really don't want to go late game. Your cards are underpowered compared to some of the other cards of like the Rakdos decks, the stuff like that. So I ended up trimming a lot of these. I traded the Voldaire and Apertures, just went up Phoenix Chicks, because really, like, why pay 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer when you could just pay 1 mana for a 1/1 flyer? The thing that won me a lot of games was putting the counters like on the Phoenix Chick, just having a big evasive creature. Similarly, like Bloodfeather Phoenix, a card that I got some value out of, like being able to instant speed, like to get it back with the recursion, with Play with Fires, Lightning Strikes had some use. I think the flyers are very good against stuff like, even when you do have to run into Shieldreds, because you can go over the top at least. So there is some utility there. Otherwise, it's got like your same kind of core of the Mono Red deck. Stoke the Flames, very, very good burn spell. Can be cast with like Convoke cost, even just 4 mana deal 4. Like I won enough games off this. I didn't really love the 3 Mishra's Foundries, to be honest. I don't like playing that many colorless lands in a deck with so many like 1 base drops. because you often can't double spell on turn 2. Even like 2 Sokuzans I don't love. There was a couple occasions where I drew both, and it was a little awkward in terms of the games played, but a different take on mono red. For those of you who played it, like, let me know your thoughts on Red Thrillseeker. I'm like really torn. Like I said, this card seems bad, it feels bad, and then I was winning games because of it, because it was just like attack you for 4 and the like 3 or 4 in the air with like a Phoenix Chick. Like I had a couple games like turn 1, turn 2 play a Phoenix Chick, turn 3 do this, and then throw the damage. It was also kind of incidental removal because you can sack the creature to deal the damage to any target. From there, mono blue tempo 64%. So this is a kind of got an upgrade in the form of Moment of Truth and Instant Speed Anticipate. However, you get to put 1 card in your graveyard, and putting cards into your graveyard has benefit here, both for Huadi Jin as well as Tolarian Terror. Huadi Jin gets its power from it, Tolarian Terror gets its cost reduction from it. The outside of the deck is pretty much the same. You got your Considers, Fading Hopes, March of Swirling Mist, Spell Pierce. Assimilate Essence is basically just the creature counter, but it also can hit battles. And then there's the payoff. If they do pay the pay for, you get to incubate and create a token. So another kind of win condition. I lost this deck a couple times. It was like a weird variance thing where I had one game my opponent drew 3 Fading Hopes into 3 Tolarian Terrors within the top like 10 cards of their library. So just really kind of tempoed me out. If you're running into a lot of like the greedy kind of Rakdos piles, the Reanimators, stuff like that, this deck's very good. It's also very budget friendly. It is probably a little bit harder of a deck to navigate. The only rares in the deck are Huadi Jin and the 2 March, and then 1 Otawara. But if you like the tempo decks, you like kind of the pseudo control, protect the queen style strategies, mono blue might be something you'd be interested in. From there, we go to Azorius Soldiers, 61%. Again, just another deck that's pretty stock. We've seen some of the mono white lists go to Archangel Elspeth, the Planeswalker, but this is just your meat and potatoes soldiers deck. Recruitment officers, Yodians, Resolute Reinforcements is, I think, a really good card. Just being able to flash in an opponent's end step lets you kind of fake. Some of these lists at times play counter spells, but most of the time it's just flash. You get to protect against sweepers. Harbin. I think there could be some utility in even upping the number of Denics in the deck. Maybe trimming on Athalia to play a second Denic with a lot of mono red going around, as well as just there's a lot of incidental try to graveyard reanimate decks, whether it be like the Saga Reanimators or the 7-mana sorcery that mills 10. It kind of shuts off all that. Also incidentally shuts off Corpse Appraiser and Graveyard Trespasser. In the 3-drop slot, Brutal Cathar, Siege Veteran, and the Sky Strike Officer for a card advantage, and then a couple Myrels on the top end. So again, deck similar to the first mono red deck, hasn't really changed that much. We then go to Selesnya Enchantments. So I've been playing a variation of this. Last month I got to Mythic with a variation of this. We got some new cards, and I tweaked. My list is different than this. This deck has got a 59% win rate, but I think it's playing cards that are just not that great. So this version's a little bit more mid-range focused, and it is playing 2 new cards in the form of Invasion of Theros. So 3 mana battle that enters the battlefield. You could search your library for an aura, god, or demigod, and then when it flips, you get Ifara Ever Sheltering. So the flip side is very good on this card. I don't think the front side is something you want. In a format with mono red and like mono blue and just a lot of heavy removal spells, I don't think you could take off turn 3 to just play tutor for either basically ossification in this deck or the Heliod Radiant Dawn, which we'll cover in a sec. And then also you're not like super heavy in terms of creatures early to really flip it that same turn, so I just don't like this card. So I kind of omitted it from my list. The other new card is Heliod Radiant Dawn. I've been playing this as a one-of. I think as a one-of it's fine. It's actually, in the grindy matchups, it's very good. I've yet to flip it. I had it in limited and I flipped it, and it's a house when you could flip it in limited, but Even just the 4 mana 4/4 return an enchantment from your graveyard to your hand played pretty well because you can get back stuff like your Jukai Naturalist, any sort of like removal that might have come out. This version here is playing a little bit more graveyard focus, so you have both Restoration of Ajanjo to like loot effects, as well as Teachings of Curran. The one thing I would say is like some of these numbers are a little off, like play 4 Generous Visitors, play the Spirited Companions. I really like the Hallowed Haunting. It's very good against the Rakdos decks, even insulating against stuff like Invoke Despair. So I'll show you my list, and I've been kind of tweaking it as we go along. So I'm 6-2 thus far with it, but I've been kind of playing around with different things. I've tried out Audacity. I've tried out Invasion of Gobukan. Originally I was on Weaver Harmony, but I kind of phased those out. The version I'm on right now, didn't catch my last game. I was playing on mobile, so I was trying Teachings of Curran. Okay, there we go. It picked it up. I'm going to probably change the Fanga Shigeki to Commune with the Spirits, the 1 mana Search for Land or Enchantment in the top X cards. Teaching of Curran. I'm still going to try this out to see how it is. Catilda's been good against like the mono red decks, but it ends up just dying to Rakdos typically, and then they eat it from the graveyard. So it's a little bit harder to pop off. I've liked Seal to Existence over Seal Away, just because it's got Ward on it, catch-all removal. But I've been heavier on the Wedding Announcement, Hallowed Haunting. I've won a lot of games just off like Wedding Announcement curves. But the Visitor plays really nicely with just pumping up little things, and then really you're just trying to take advantage of Hallowed Haunting. An ideal draw is something like Visitor on 1, Jukai Naturalist on 2, play the Hallowed Haunting on turn 3 with the cost reduction, and then just making a whole bunch of spirits. You can usually outgrind a lot of the kind of bigger decks in the format, like the Evoke decks, stuff like that. My losses were to Grixis, and then the red-white Itali Reanimator deck that just kind of went over the top of me. But I like this deck. I think this version's a little bit cleaner. Also, just play your full duels. Like, this version's not playing all your duels because it's trying to have a heavier volume for the ossification. Kami's fine, but I think it's kind of past that time. Kami was really good in the Runes deck because you're casting so many spells. In this deck here, I find it just to be not as effective. So then moving on to Grixis Midrange. This is the Grixis Hidetsugu Enkari combo deck. This is at 59% win rate. It is basically what you're trying to do with this deck. You're playing it in the Grixis shell, but it's got a backdoor combo. With Hidetsugu, you get to Brainstorm, put 2 cards back into your library. You hope that it's Expressive Singularity, and then if your Hidetsugu dies, with this on top, you get to deal 10 damage based on this mana cost, and then get to cast the Singularity as well. You can also set it up so if you have enough mana, you cast the Hidetsugu, you put this on top, and then you kill your own Hidetsugu. You can do that with like any of your removal spells in the deck as well. It's also just incidentally just plays really, really good cards. Fable the Mirror Breaker, Corpse Praiser, Bloodtide Harvester, Shieldred, Chandra. This Chandra is so good. Like, every time it gets cast against me, it's just such a wall. Like, card advantage, doubling up stuff, just a whole bunch of utility out of this Planeswalker. From there, we go to Esper Legends. With the Legends deck's at 58% win rate, and this version's kind of a mashup. Some of the versions are going to be on the Wedding Announcement still, some aren't. But this version's on the Wedding Announcements, only 3 Ronas, 3 Deniks. Sometimes you'll see 4 of these. You usually don't see too many non-creature spells just because Thalia then hurts you in that regard. Interesting to also see a Lorn in the main board, as well as 2 Elish Norns. A lot of the Pro Tour lists, at least in best of 3, were on the full 4 Shieldred in the main. But Elish Norn really punishes like the mono red decks, like the low mana decks. Just if you want to deal damage in any way, you're just taking a lot of damage yourself. And then once you can flip it with stuff like it makes more sense to have Wedding Announcement in this deck if you're also playing the Elish Norn, because it gives you fuel to potentially flip it. And most of the time when you flip it, I would assume you're ahead in the game or winning, just giving yourself so much power on the board to kind of, and then also a pseudo board wipe on this last chapter. AO kind of coming in, and then with these decks you'll notice like a high number of line counts, usually 26 to 28, in part because they're playing a large number of these channel lines. which with so many legendaries, you're able to cycle for 1 mana in the deck. We then move to Rakdos Midrange, 57.8, 58%, and this is another deck that's just kill a lot of stuff. The innovation with a lot of these decks is they're moving on to a single copy of Archfiend of Juros in the main, just a way to kind of quickly close out the game, and then do incidental drain just through killing you. Grixis Command as a sweeper for best of one, but also a life gain enabler, kind of recycling your threats. The ideal thing to do is Chandra's Hope's Beacon, untap, double invoke to spare your opponent. Just emotionally destroy them, and then these decks are slowly starting to introduce a single copy of the MYTHIC in the mana base. Just in the grindier games, it gives you, while not a blocker like Castle Ardenvale, it does provide you with like a 1/1 that can kind of push through some damage into your opponent. And then lastly, I found it. Someone is doing it, 56% with mono green Stompy. So mono green cards still maybe playable, maybe. So you have your Ascendant Pack Leaders, Evolving Adaptive as your 1-drop set grow. Similarly, you have the Beast Caller that gets bigger with more creatures. Bushwhack can be used to either help you find lands early or fight creatures later. Tyvar Stand as protection. But then you have your Contaminators. These all get various types of counters, so your Proliferate can then put more counters on it. You're probably not going to win with Infect in this deck, but you're still able to kind of get things larger. Poly K as a good efficient beater on curve, and then a way to gain you life on the flip side. Primal Adversary. This one, sure, you can make creatures lands. I guess it's your late game threat. This card seemed like next to no play in the format. Tandem Takedown is a card that's probably a limited bomb, but up to 2. So instant, up to 2 target creatures you control each get +1/0. They deal damage equal to power. Target creature, planeswalker, or battle. So nice little kind of tag team removal. 3 mana is a little high, but it is instant speed, and notably it's not a fight effect, it's a deal damage effect, which is good if you're trying to run into stuff like Shieldred, which naturally has Death Touch, that you don't want to necessarily trade 2 of your creatures plus a card in hand to kill their Shieldred. They still come up pretty far ahead in there. We have the Duskar Warrior here. 4 mana, 4/3 backup. They can put Trample onto another creature, which is really nice safe. You have a very large Quirion Beast Caller. Also provides you some card advantage, which mono greens lacked for a while. And then your top end's the Rootwire Amalgam. 5 mana, 5/5. Or you could have it as a 2 mana, 2/3. So it's nice because it fits both spots on the curve. And then this is also insulated against Go for the Throat because it is a artifact creature. 5 mana, you could sacrifice it. You could create XX Golem, where X is 3 times its power. So it's either a 5 mana 15, or you can get a 5 mana, or sorry, 5 mana 6/6, or 5 mana 15/15. So kind of cool that way there. And then just a single copy of Thrun, 2 Besejus, 2 Myrics in the mana base. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.